appreciated being able to light the tenebrae candles this morning, and was thinking about a friend of mine who's a minister in Australia. It's a very different experience to be having a fall time of Lent. As you could imagine, there the days are getting shorter. And for them, the tenebrae, the gradual extinction of candles, is a very different image than it is for us. And if you ever get a chance to look at an Australian Easter hymn, you get a strong sense of the impact our geography makes on almost all of the images we use. So on the first Sunday of Lent, all 7 candles are lit. And as each week progresses, after we've lit them, the number of weeks we have already passed are extinguished. And so it would be, even more evocatively in the Southern Hemisphere, that each week less light is emitted. Until finally all the candles are extinguished, and you'll see the bottom one is black for Good Friday. And then only the Christ candle will remain lit, and it's not extinguished, but it is removed from the sanctuary during the Good Friday service. And it comes back on Easter morning. So the tenebrae image for us this year, I just think is so perfectly aligned for the world despair we're feeling in Lent of 2022. It just seems to keep on getting darker. Now, beside our Lenten table is that beautiful old battered ladder. And that's the anchor image from our Lenten series, that repurposed ladder. I don't imagine anybody would want to go up that who weighed more than 35 pounds. But as you have seen in the first 2 services, we've been trying to make use of it in a different way to suggest it's still useful, but not in its way it was originally intended, or the way we were taught was really the only way you could use ladders. Although maybe some of you have visited some of those Gucci hotels that use ladders for their towels in the bathroom. Last week, we had both the rainbow flag and the trans flag coming off that ladder as another indication of a different way of using it. The beautiful diversity that celebrates that God loves us all equally. Well, going up the ladder, as that image in the video showed so clearly, that was the image that most of the generations that walk North American soil today, most of us were brought up with that. It's a good thing. Going up the ladder. I was talking to a friend of mine who is a minister in the Peterborough area, and she said, yeah, you remember when people used to talk about she'd married up? I don't think they use that phrase anymore. But going up the corporate ladder, hitting the glass ceiling, up the corporate ladder, or traveling up the social ladder, moving to a better neighborhood. They've moved up the ladder. Or when we were kids, when I was a kid in Sunday school, we used to sing a song about going up Jacob's ladder. Do you remember that? And what was that wonderful killer last line? Soldiers of the cross. I mean, these are little kids missing their front teeth singing Soldiers of the Cross. Happily, most of those images that song in particular is long since out of use. But what might the Lenten ladder mean to us? What could we be saying? I know, we're asking ourselves to challenge how that concept, that traveling up as always a good idea, is still deeply embedded in our psyche and in our individual philosophy of life and that of our nation. Not constantly seeking life, relentlessly girding our loins, and we can do it one more day, up we go. So we're focusing on trying to ease our obsession with constant improvement, constantly better, constantly taking on the challenge. As they say, it's the Olympics that are all about faster, not our lives. That we don't have to adopt those attitudes because they are extraordinarily consuming attitudes, consuming in our spiritual energy, in the resources of this limited planet and of our society. So we're trying to start a kind of new set of images for us to play with in the days between Sundays And that's why we've got these plants on it, that beautiful heather and the hellebore, to say, what if these things that used to be pushing us to go higher became now a little tiny center of beauty, a little, as it were, garden in our midst? How would that challenge how we were brought up? What we have taught, perhaps, our children, and what we certainly see in the culture all around us. So our ladder is an invitation to re-examine that whole upward mobility, that thrust. And there is a church in this city called the Winners' Chapel. We are not it. Just too exhausting, too costly to be constantly going through life saying, winner, loser, not sure about you. Exhausting, isn't it? Right? And that's the beauty of that opening session of speeches that Jesus had, that David read, like, oh, you think you're better? Higher up the ladder, are you? Okay. So, I have never liked the parable of the fig tree. It always seemed to me to be very confusing. Cut it down. I just feel that. I read it this year with new eyes and new appreciation because I felt as a fig tree, with the gardener being, say, the sacred spirit, saying, give her a year. Give him a year. Soil, loosen up the soil. Provide water. Manure around the roots. I was at a wedding this summer where a tree fell apart because it had been ruined in the heat dome. Did any of you live near a neighborhood where you had trees damaged by that heat dome this summer? So we're just saying to those trees, how can we support you? Rather than cut down and start over, is there a way to trench around those trees? When I lived in Vancouver, the trees had bladders. Did you have them here? Those great big plastic things? Maybe they're a good idea going back. So the idea of having a year of fallow time, quiet time. Let the nitrogen get reposited in the soil. Let it alone. But our expectation is figs from a fig tree. I don't really think that's asking too much, do you? That's why we call it a fig tree. Right? That's why we call her a That's why we call him a that. That's why we pay them to do this. We have clear expectations, and taking time off for self-care, for all different kinds of medicine, for whatever is the equivalent in your life of water at your roots can be countercultural still, even in 2022. Even still, it can be countercultural to say, I'm taking a mental health day. I'm taking a break. I'm stepping back. But surely that's what the fig tree story gives us courage to do. Nobody doubted in that traveling through the trees that day that they were all supposed to be producing figs. But maybe there was another way to have figs in the future that didn't involve cutting down that tree in the present. It is a big ask, my friends, to reduce your expectations. I've shared this a lot, and I'll share it again, and you're going to hear this from me again. But there was a very famous couple who will remain nameless. They're American. They were celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary. And they said to the wife, how have you stayed married to him for 40 years? And she said, I have constantly reduced my expectations. Isn't she smart? Yeah. So here we are. Our expectations of ourselves, of our country, of NATO, of the West. We're looking to them to be like the fig tree. And yet it is no longer possible that they can all produce, ourselves included, to the expectations we have brought to this situation. It is a big ask. And although it strikes me as humorous about that 40th anniversary, it's not usually humorous to say, okay, if that's not possible, how can I reduce my expectations so I stay in this conversation feeling sad but not despairing? That's what I think the fig tree tells us. Reducing our expectations. And part of that's generational. I had a conversation the other day where somebody's grandson had not thanked them for a present. I thought, when was the last time people actually sat down and written thank yous? That generation doesn't even have cursive script at school anymore. Anyways, he probably put it up on Facebook, don't you think? Thanks to everybody for a great birthday, yeah, with a bunch of happy faces. His granny didn't see that, and I'm sorry about that, but I'm not on Facebook, so I can't really help her. But relaxing our expectations is not easy, but it is, I believe, a gift of spirit. By that release of expectation, we're given a modicum of peace, and in that breath of peace, a new idea might be born. A new possibility might happen because of the water at our roots, because, yes, the fertilizer, the manure, whatever that is in your life, that gives you time to soak in resources. And anything can be medicine. It can be a cup of herbal tea. It can be a walk in Beacon Hill Park. It can be buying seeds at Butchart Gardens. Anything can be medicine. Maybe the ladder with our plants is another image, because if you wanted to use that ladder, and I'd really advise against it, you would be difficult to walk around those letters and those plants, wouldn't it? The decorations would impede your upward travel. And so maybe it's a way of forcing us to think how else we can achieve our goal, how else we can hone our path. Because right now, with the number of goals we are carrying in the backpack over our shoulders, makes the idea of going up anything very, very difficult. And in our heart, as we seek to place our feet, as it were, on a rung of achievement, on a step of possibility, there's a lot of odd-sized plants and things in our way in 2022. Now, I believe we still live in a culture bent on describing the good life as constantly upward mobility. And if you doubt it, come with me to a checkout booth I had, waiting to go through, a self-serve. And look at the titles. How you can lose weight by Easter, right? How you can save for your retirement in a year. How you can stop drinking the latte and be able to afford a house, or something equally ridiculous. But the headlines, the people on afternoon television telling us how we can change and quickly achieve something extraordinarily difficult. Get moving just now. Get moving now. What day is it? It's Sunday. So probably by Thursday you'll have more money in the bank, better friends, and more followers on Instagram. I'm sure it'll happen. So they say if you want to sell a book, you have to list a set of steps that people can follow, and I would suggest you don't make it 114. Make it like 7 steps to happiness, 18 steps to a vibrant senior year, whatever you want. People were engaged by that, thinking that's just 18 steps up that ladder. I'm sure what could possibly go wrong? And so the self-help books in the bookstores and in the library, there's a huge section. But as people of faith, we do not believe we are self-made. We're not self-made. We're not a self-made millionaire. We're not a self-made anything. We believe that we are creatures of a divine creator. That's a different way of looking at life, isn't it? Of course it is. So the problem is that these big prizes are so hard for us that we do want to find the person who can tell us how to do it in just 16 steps. So Lent is a time to step back, as the gardener suggested they do in the orchard with the fig tree. Step back. Now, the gardener suggests for a whole year. Step back for a whole year and provide all the natural medicines you can and see what happens. Who likes to be the minister saying to people, be patient? I mean, really, that doesn't sell, and I know it. I'm so sorry to have to say that. But the truth is, we've been trying to dance really, really quickly, and we're exhausted. And it's not our fault that Russia invaded Ukraine, There are a number of things we can do. When you and I each decide to do one a day, we have a better chance of doing it than thinking somehow we are responsible for changing that all quickly. I'm wearing the lovely little colors that Mary made for the choir. I saw the Russian cosmonauts arrive at the space station in the colors of the Ukraine flag, and there was a moment of hope, wasn't there, when you saw that? So we have to let the manure, I love the thought about that, the manure soak in. And I know this has been a long sermon, but I went to agricultural college. And until then, I had no idea that some people thought manure smelled good. But they were right. It is such a fabulous gift to the soil, to the crops. So what is the manure that will heal you? It will be individual. It may not smell good to the guy beside you. And that, it doesn't matter, because you're listening to that spiritual gardener who says to you, take it for a year. Just step back. Cut the expectations that you're going to be a heavily fig-producing tree. Embrace yourself as beloved, if imperfect. That the kind of fig tree you are right now is good enough to the sacred spirit. And for a year, seek to find those equivalents in your life of water and manure and rest, to allow your spirit to soak in those other medicines. And so the gardener is suggesting to us that maybe this will be a year that we would describe as mediocre. And if you bought magazines at the end of December saying, make 2022 your best year ever, you may want to take them back for a refund. Our book we're reading, Good Enough, has this lovely little blessing. She wrote, "Blessed are you who realize there is simply not enough time, money, resources. Blessed are you who are tired of pretending that raw effort is the secret to perfection. It's not, and you know that now. Blessed are you that need a gentle reminder that even now, even today, God is here, and somehow that is good enough." Amen.